Uh, Christine, if it's all right with you, I will kick us off, take Jim's spot. Thank you very much for the opportunity to meet with you this morning and to present some background information about WSU Extension and our Clark County presence. I'm Mike Gaffney. I'm Assistant Director of Extension statewide, also Director of one of our three program units. And my unit is the Community and Economic Development Program Unit. Uh, by historic artifact of previous organizational structure, uh, each of our program units has county directors from multiple counties in their units. In the case here, Clark County is one of the counties in my program unit. And so I've got, if you will, double responsibility for Clark County Extension, one through my program unit and one through my assistant director role. With me today eventually will be Jim Kropf, who wears a number of hats in Extension, but germane to this conversation is as Director of County Operations. He manages our county relationships statewide and assists county directors in matters directly related to their operations in their counties. And Christine Perry, who I think you probably all know. Christine is our interim director of Clark County Extension and has been in that role for over a year now. Christine will be pleased to know that we finally got authorization to open a search for that position, and we'll be initiating that process shortly. I'm not entirely sure I know how to advance the slides. I got just like that. Okay, great. Magic. So I want to very quickly give you a broad overview of history. As many of you probably know, WSU is the land grant university in the state of Washington. Land grants as a system were created by the Morrill Act of 1862. The legislation was signed by Abraham Lincoln. And the goal of the Morrill Act and the land grant university system was to provide a mechanism whereby people other than the elite had access to higher education. A real sea change in the way education was thought of and delivered in the new United States. Building on the Morrill Act, the Hatch Act of 1887 created the Agricultural Experiment Station System, and then in 1914, the Smith-Lever Act officially created the National Cooperative Extension System, of which WSU Extension is a part. And we have held that status since since statehood, with the additions that you see here, Smith-Lever being the most recent big change, although there have been a number of subsequent statutory changes along the way. In Washington, statute provides an authorization for counties to partner with Extension to create and support local county extension offices. And that relationship is most often memorialized in an intergovernmental agreement of some sort. And there is one such agreement between WSU and Clark County. We have an office in all 39 counties and in one formal tribal office with the Colville Reservation. Our first office was opened in 1912, Clark County, slightly after that, 1917. Next slide, please. Thanks. And that's just a graphic, if you will. Morrill, the original act was aimed at transmission of knowledge. The Hatch Act was aimed at research, and Smith-Lever was formulated to foster extension. All three of those elements are present in every one of our extension offices. Next slide, please. And just a quick overview of our extension mission. Again, should be relatively familiar territory if you've been watching the quarterly reports coming out of Christine's office. Engaging people, organizations, and communities with a focus on well-being, quality of life, and application of the otherwise may be remote or theoretical knowledge of the university to practical purpose in the field. Next slide, please. And again, just a quick visual to let you know where we are across the state. For extension, we track 53 locations where we have people across the state, and there are many more locations where we have significant property interests. Next slide, please. Just a picture of extensions funding, again, a reflection of both the federal statutes and the RCW that specifically create partnerships. Traditionally, we think of a three-legged stool with state funding coming through WSU's general fund budget with county support, such as is currently and has been provided by Clark County and every other county, and federal dollars coming through Smith-Lever and Hatch. But over the years, that has changed pretty substantially as we've developed other sources of funding. And most significant is our increasing reliance on grants and contracts and extramural dollars. And you'll see that that's the largest proportion of our budget is grants. Last year, that was almost $19 million, as opposed to about 14 from the state. And Smith-Lever of not quite 5 million. RREA is another federal USDA funding source, as is the Fnet Food and Nutrition Program, which is active in Clark County. The MOAs is our shorthand for those interlocal agreements between counties. So statewide, counties provide almost $5 million in cash support for extension offices in those counties. And then counties also provide in-kind support. Again, not a surprise to those of you in Clark County government. Next slide, please.
Mike, can I point out, this is Jim Croft, and if you back up one slide, the MOAs are critical to WSU funding, and all the counties do contribute to that. And just to point out how some of these funds affect Clark County, the Smith-Lever, as Mike mentioned, are our federal formula funds that help support extension in Clark County. RREA is a Rural Resource Extension Act, and it focuses on forestry and range. And we do have a Southwest Washington forester located in Chehalis, and he serves Clark County also. FNEP is our Extension Food and Nutrition Education Program, or Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program. And one of the 3 county programs are located in Clark County. And the last thing on there is F&A, or Overhead Facilities and Administration. And the county MOAs are not subject to that. And that's one of the few, I guess, grants or contracts with WSU that are not subject to overhead. So this goes back 100 years. And a dollar that comes to WSU is a dollar. You're not losing anything off the top. So that is part of our long-standing partnerships. And the interesting part about grants is that extension is very grant active. We are typically number 2 or 3 in the entire university, usually number 2 after our Ag Research Center. So a very, very important component of our overall extension budget.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate that clarification. And as I said, I just want to emphasize each one of our 39 county offices is supported directly and in kind for a portion of their operations budget by their county partner to provide a suite of extension services. Jim mentioned FNEP in particular, forestry as an example, but other prime examples, and again, present in Clark County, include the Master Gardener Program, the 4-H program, other food and nutrition programs, positive youth development programs, and a smorgasbord of other services that vary from county to county. Next slide.
And this next slide does point out that we call it in kind, but that is the money that's retained typically locally in the county office budget for travel, office support, for support staff, purchases, and that type of thing. And with Clark County, that is all included in the contract, but other counties do retain some money locally. Otherwise, this is a repeat or spells out what is in the pie chart in the previous slide.
Thanks, Jim. And I think we're turning over to Christine at this point.
Yes. Thanks, Mike and Jim, for giving everyone an overview of the context of what Extension is now doing that supports communities all across the state. So now I'm going to talk to you all about Extension's work right here in Clark County. So the Clark County, as Mike mentioned, has been serving this community for over 100 years. Currently, there are 26 staff members, 503 volunteers, and in 2019-20 year, Extension gave over, the volunteers gave over 47,000 hours of their time. As you see, from this last year, we reached over 90,000 community members with support of both our staff and volunteers and the strong connections that we have with over 100 community partners. In addition to the funding that we get from the county, as Mike mentioned, from our MOA, the general operations, Extension Clark County brought in over $1,257,817. And that was to help make all the community outreach work that we do possible. Next slide, please. So this is a little pie chart. So you saw the statewide pie chart that Mike gave us. This is specifically for Clark County. WSU Extension in Clark County has a variety of funding, as Mike mentions, from grants, contracts, gifts, workshops, expenditures, and state and federal funds. Last year, our total was a little over $1.5 million in cash, with a little over 310,000 coming from the county's general fund. And what we have found that for every county dollar fund, WSU leverages it with $3.77. So Extension is also, in addition to this cash, provided a value of $138,000 in volunteer time. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about WSU Clark County programs. We have 4 different program areas. Those are 4-H youth development, health and wellness, natural resources, and food systems. So each of these program areas strives towards meeting the needs of the community by enhancing the general quality of life, developing our youth, keeping our residents healthy, sustaining a healthy environment, and promoting economic growth and diversity. And we do this by experiential hands-on learning that is theoretically grounded, research tested, and field proven. Our goal is to create lifelong learning opportunities for groups and communities around theme and issues that matter to them. This helps also, we look at changing behaviors, thus saving Clark County's money through preventative actions that reduce costs in areas such as healthcare and the environment. So now I'm going to go into just the individual programs. Next slide, please. So our 4-H program. The 4-H program provides a structured learning environment for both adult mentors and to help youth achieve success in life. The program focuses on 8 life skills from caring, thinking, living, being, managing, relating, giving, working. These clubs meet based on subject areas ranging from animal husbandry to robotics. And they do projects that compete at the county fair, as you hopefully have seen. 4-H also coordinates a restorative community service program at the Heritage Farm in participation with the Clark County Juvenile Courts. At-risk youth work in the food bank garden at Heritage Farm to learn how to plant, tend to the garden, and harvest what they've grown, then making amends for the harm that they may have done to the community. They also coordinate a Yay 4-H community choice program where team teachers receive specialized training and lead elementary school students on topics in health and nutrition. Next slide, please. A national study of 4-H programs by Tufts University, showed that 4-H participants are more likely to attend college, engage in their communities, and less likely to enter the justice system than youth and other programs. Young adults not in school or working cost taxpayers $93 billion annually in lost revenues and increased social services. But 94% of Washington 4-H youth, young adults in surveys that they were enrolled in school and working. Associate and bachelor's degree holders earned 1/3 and 3/4 more over a lifetime than high school diploma holders. The survey also found that 4-H youth are less likely to engage in behaviors that impose costs on services such as the justice system and the healthcare system. Next slide, please. Our diabetes program. The diabetes program is recognized by the CDC to prevent type 2 diabetes. This year-long, lifestyle change program is for those with pre-diabetes or at high risk for diabetes. The program is found to cut people's risk by developing diabetes in half by gaining healthy new habits that last a lifetime. The estimated potential savings per year in diabetes related medical costs is $387,000. We also have a food safety and nutrition program that participants learn about food safety handling techniques and prevent the spread of disease and illness with improper food handling and storage. 80% of our participants increase their knowledge on how to safely preserve food. Next slide, please. Our SNAP-Ed program. Our SNAP-Ed program is one of the biggest programs at Extension and in the state, with it being completely funded by federal dollars. The goal of SNAP-Ed, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Education Program, is to improve the likelihood that families who are eligible for SNAP benefits can make healthy choices within a limited budget and choose a physically active lifestyle. SNAP-Ed does this by supporting families who face food insecurity. They use nutrition education and obesity prevention interventions to prevent or reduce diet-related diseases. And they also help those eligible with SNAP to make healthy choices on a limited budget. Next slide, please. So a Washington State Food Security Survey, which was administered in 2020 to understand the impacts of COVID-19 on the economic security and food access. So some of the results that they found in Clark County indicated that 35% of households experienced food insecurity, with 63% of those being children, and that food assistance was sought out 40% in households. So during the pandemic, the SNAP-Ed program worked with every food pantry in the Vancouver and Evergreen School District to gain more food access in schools. And they also worked with farmers markets and their SNAP Match program. Next slide. Our FNET program. The FNET program is called the Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program, and it assists low-income families with children. They help to acquire skills, knowledge, and behavior necessary to improve family diet and nutrition welfare on a fixed food budget. The FNET program was lost. We lost our funding in 2008, but we fortunately secured it again. And we hired a whole new team to work with families to provide educational support. Again, this hands-on education program is for parents and children. Classes are taught in schools and community agencies that serve low-income families. They teach about reading nutrition labels, cooking at home, and planning healthy meals. The goal is that families make healthy choices and save money. One of the health impacts for FNET program is a study done at Ohio State University with their FNET program. And they found that each dollar spent on FNET was associated with $10.75 reduction in long-term healthcare spending for people who participated. Next slide, please. Our Master Gardener program. Our Master Gardener program is the 5th largest program in the state. It trains volunteers to work with the public on correct reduced pesticide and herbicide use, integrated pest management, water-wise landscaping, natural gardening, reducing pollutants entering the environment. The Master Gardener does this. Well, we couldn't do this without our volunteers. We currently have almost 300 volunteers who have served over 20,000 hours of community service for this community in a variety of ways, from workshops to educational, around invasive insect, weeds, gardening. They're at county fairs, they're at the Home and Garden Show, the farmers market, nurseries, at the Heritage Farm. They also work in classrooms in all of our schools. Next slide. We have our small acreage program. The small acreage program supports rural residents on how to better care for their land and save money by doing so. They have classes and workshops like living on the land for land stewardship. They have ag entrepreneurship and business planning that helps community members develop successful business plans for their farm business. They teach landowners about watershed, pasture and weed management, composting, manure, well and septic certifications. Every year they host a small acreage expo, a women in agricultural conference, and a harvest celebration that we just did. And for the first time, we had a tour at the Heritage Farm. This year, I think they hosted over 500 people throughout the county at all the different farms that people visited. Next slide. Our Southwest Regional Agricultural Program, which is the research that we do on the farm. It helps to develop and deliver research and education relevant to ag community with over 2,500 commercial farmers operating across 125,000 acres within Clark, Cowlitz, and Skamania County. Approximately 75% of the farms and acreage lie within Clark County, which has the highest farm density of any county in Washington, and where 53% of the soils are classified as agricultural and hold the highest average inherent productivity rates in the state. Extension program efforts are directed at bolstering the economic viability of Clark County's long-standing farms and farming economy, and addressing the acute need for farm business to adapt and evolve to a rapidly urbanizing context that keeps Clark County's world-class soil producing viable economic returns for our farmers and benefits our community in perpetuity. So one of the impacts was from the field research outcomes that goes on at the farm. 5 of Southwest Washington's major raspberry and blackberry growers reported that they saved money and recovered yield from a new pest guidelines developed by our program. Next slide, please. One of the last programs I'll talk about is our community garden that we oversee, that we coordinate at Heritage Farm. The community garden provides a place for community members to grow food for themselves and their families. We currently have 88 community plots that families grow fruits and vegetables. It's a pesticide-free and year-round community garden that does not till up plots at the end of the growing season. The benefit of this is so that community gardeners can garden year-round, as well as plant perennial vegetables and different herbs. Many of the families donate their extra food that they grow to food pantries around the county, helping to help feed hungry families. And the garden is also there to serve as awareness of origins of food and to increase appreciation for local ag, as well to better connect the local community to the farm. The garden also provides green space to citizens, providing mental relaxation and stress alleviation. All of these programs are made possible by our partnership and a commitment that we have leveraged of funds and support of Clark County that is provided every year. The community thanks you for that. Next slide. And I think this is turned over to Mike and to Jim.
Thank you. And Jim and I think we'll probably tag team on this. You've got a document as part of the package for this briefing session that gives you some of the history of Heritage Farm. I want to start by emphasizing that much of what you just heard in terms of the phenomenal programming going on through the Clark County Extension Office is really not connected to Heritage Farm at all. Much of the programming you heard about is the type of programming that happens in many of our other county offices where we don't have the advantage of a farm such as Heritage. Some of the last programs that Christine talked about do reflect the benefits of having an extension program connected to a farm space such as Heritage Farm. And that is relatively unique in Washington and something that we and Clark County should be proud of. Originally, the property that we call Heritage Farm was transferred by the county to WSU Extension in 1949 to become one of our agricultural experiment stations, what we now call research and extension centers. We currently have 4 of those across the state. And we maintained an agricultural experiment presence and activity on the farm until 2008, when through negotiation with then Board of County Commissioners, WSU transferred the farm back to the county with a reservation of the right to occupy and some language about maintenance and operations. I would suggest that probably not enough language about maintenance and operations and not enough specificity. That's an area that we're working on right now with units of county government. In 2011, we added to our presence at Heritage Farm. We had a split in operations. In those days, we were organized into districts rather than program units, and the Southwest District was headquartered at Heritage Farms. In 2011, I think that's probably contemporaneous with restructuring into program units and dissolving the districts. The County Extension Office moved from its previous location onto the Heritage Farm site in its current location. And then picked up additional activities, again, subject to that 2008 agreement where the transfer occurred, to conduct ag research, manage community garden plots such as you just heard about from Christine, provide education workshops and demonstrations, public reception services, and to work with a variety of stakeholder and advisory groups concerned with Heritage Farm activities. Next slide, please.
Mike,
go ahead.
Just a bit of an addition to that. Starting shortly after that, maybe 2013, 14, we did have a series of meetings with county manager, economic development, and our host department at that time, environmental services. And we ended that with a presentation to the Board of County Commissioners. And the charge to us was to make the Heritage Farm open to the public. It should be a research and outreach site that benefits the residents of Clark County, focusing on farmers. And after retirement of our previous county faculty, we did hire Justin O'Day, who joined us from Cornell University in New York. And our goal was to get on-farm research that would benefit the whole region. And he's gone certainly above and beyond that in implementing and installing a high tunnel, doing research year-round that does benefit the community. And in addition, having the community gardens there, food bank, and other groups has certainly opened up the entire farm to the public and become a real success.
Thanks, Jim. So at present, we have 3 interrelated initiatives underway in various stages of conversation between elements of Clark County government and WSU Extension. One is ongoing maintenance and improvement of the relationship under the interlocal agreement, which is, if you will, the sort of the statewide norm for us. And that is actually probably the most secure and stable of the 3 initiatives right now. Second is renegotiating a lease that was issued to memorialize WSU Extension's occupancy of the building at Heritage Farm, and to make sure that we have provision for percentage of occupancy and operations there. And the third, not yet accomplished, but probably of the most interest, is to develop a document that would memorialize the relationship and the respective roles and responsibilities around maintenance and operation of Heritage Farm. And to improve base knowledge to inform that conversation, what should the various roles and responsibilities be, we've engaged WSU's Metropolitan Center for Applied Research and Extension to do an engaged fact-finding process that reaches out to county government, to agency representatives, to the stakeholder groups, and to the associations who have an interest in the future operations of Heritage Farm, to try to develop a clear understanding of the various points of view, the opportunities and the challenges connected with operation of Heritage Farm, and then to come back to WSU and Clark County government with a report on those observations and findings and some recommendations around how collectively we might better operate Heritage Farm and meet the various goals and desires of the stakeholder groups. That process is underway as we speak. And so one of the things we wanted to make clear in this session was that we see the three initiatives, right? The baseline relationship between WSU Extension and Clark County for the operation of a county extension office with all of its programmatic activities as one. The lease or other documentation necessary to better describe, define, and clarify expectations around occupancy of the building at Heritage Farms. And then the third element would be operational responsibility and a clarification of expectations about how jointly we follow the management plan for Heritage Farms in the most productive fashion. Those could be one document, they could be three interrelated documents, and at present we're treating them as separate documents, but doing our best with the involved parties to make sure that they are interrelated in ways that they really have not been to date, to help clarify roles, responsibilities, and expectations. Next slide. That's a lot in 32 minutes. We really appreciate your time and attention and the opportunity to make this presentation to you and answer any questions you might have.
Are there questions or comments from the council to WSU here?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So thank you for that wonderful briefing. And I look forward to meeting with each of you, perhaps at the same time or hopefully in person or via Zoom, because I have so many questions that we don't have the time this morning. I just, I see such a disconnect. You know, these briefing slides, these programming, it all sounds so wonderful. Yet the farm is still, a lot of land is fallow, doesn't seem to be used whatsoever. It's fenced off from the public behind a cipher lock. The historic building likewise is locked and controlled by WSU. I couldn't even get into the building myself until someone came by to open it up. There's so much potential here, and we need a business plan. We need it to be sustainable. We need it to be used to its maximum. I saw some discordant figures, and I don't know where the 90,000 people came into being. Previous presentations about Heritage have shown maybe a few thousand people that have come through. And that started the comparison for me with Columbia Springs, which I thought was an enormous educational program and collaborative effort with Vancouver and the school system, great ecological programs going out there, maximum use of that fishery. You know, even the garden plots, I hear about a waiting list, some people having multiple lots, visiting at different times, getting a snapshot, seeing what looked like really abandoned lots that weren't being used whatsoever. I have some real questions about how do we really operate this farm to its maximum potential. We have food bank issues. LULAC has a new initiative to address diabetes and obesity and wants to weigh into the food bank. And I'm just wondering, and the nexus to COVID-19, it's really relevant and important to our community. And the bottom line is we need this to be sustainable. And I know all the numbers that you've thrown out there to give value to the volunteer hours and the carrots that are produced for the food bank, but they become very expensive carrots ultimately. So I am so behind what you've just briefed here. I just don't know that we're really seeing all that activity at its full capability at the farm right now. So I look forward to further work and collaboration with you to see if we can get to a higher use, if you will.
May I respond briefly?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I really appreciate those comments, and let me start with a yes. I look forward to further conversations about this. The discordant numbers you referenced, I think, are illustrative of one of the fundamental issues that I hope we can address, and that is clarifying the distinction between what I would call general normal county extension operations, which is the 90,000 served number that you saw. And that's in line with our experience in other counties, as is the level of support, monetary and otherwise, that our extension program receives from Clark County government. That's consistent with our experience in our other large counties. And consistent, although I would suggest that Clark County is doing perhaps better than some in terms of the numbers served and programmatic activities. What we don't have, I think, and where I think we can most productively engage is an agreement to address exactly the issues you identified, and that is a clearer understanding of not just shared responsibility. I think we recognize we have that, both Clark County and Extension for Heritage Farm, but really a granular understanding about who does what, where the opportunities are that are not being recognized, where there's a need which is not being met, where there is a chance to be to jointly manage for much more productive use of Heritage Farm. I think all of that is subject of worthwhile conversations. That in part is what we're hoping to get some input on from the Metro Center as well, to help inform those conversations. And I will just say again, in closing, yes, we're keenly interested in that level of conversation about where the opportunities and challenges are, and to be frank, where the line is or might be between county management and operations and WSU management and operations for a heritage farm site that is jointly occupied. And I don't have answers to that. It would be presumptuous of me to provide answers to those questions right now. That really is, I think, where we can best invest our time. And I will cheerfully come to Vancouver when we get the next opportunity to help advance those conversations.
Thank you. Does that answer your basic questions, Councilor Medviji?
Thanks to all. We have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. I just have a question too about it. I came about as you were answering, Councilor Medviji. Other counties that have these extension services, where are they normally located? How does that work for other counties that are similar, for instance, to Clark County?
As you might imagine, with 39 county and one tribal office, there's a variety of infrastructure relationship. I'll just give you a couple of examples. Spokane County occupies a building contiguous with the county fairgrounds. It's a county-owned building occupied by WSU Extension, and that falls into the in-kind support category that you saw mentioned earlier on. Snohomish County Extension, also one of our larger county operations, is in buildings located on a county park Again, county-owned buildings, currently not occupied. They have a little problem with indoor air quality, and the county has shut down the buildings to reduce health risks. So we're borrowing space in other locations owned or controlled by the county. On the other end of the spectrum, we have places like Ferry County where we occupy 3 rooms that used to be the sheriff's office and jail in the basement of the courthouse. And, historically that was the norm, that we had an office in the county courthouse. As county government has grown, as buildings have been modernized, that has changed over time. And so again, we've got quite a variety of arrangements. The norm, if you will, is a county finding or identifying appropriate space and then providing access to that space as an in-kind contribution to the operation of the county extension office.
Thank you. That's helpful. Other questions from the council? Hearing and seeing none. We do appreciate you coming and giving us this presentation. It is helpful. And I would agree, we still have work to do. So, and I believe you believe that as well, because we're talking about these 3 principles or things that we need to complete together and have a better understanding probably. So again, thanks so much for the presentation. Very helpful. And we will look forward to seeing and working with you soon.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Kathleen, go ahead.
So that did conclude the work session this morning, and it has been noticed online. If you want to start council time immediately following the